Hello, this is David Mandell, host of the podcast. Thanks for joining us today. So we're in the summer. That means the Summer Rewind series. We don't create new episodes, but what I do is go back into the archives. And this year, in the summer, I'm going into season 3, about a year and a half a year ago. And I pull episodes. There are lots of good ones, but I pulled certain ones I just thought were interesting again for those of you who might have missed it. And so this one was originally 3.12, Career Moves, Personal Finance, and Entrepreneurship with Dr. Selene Parekh. What I liked about this episode was a couple things. One is Selene is certainly a well-respected orthopedic surgeon, but he also has an MBA, and I wanted to delve in why he did that. He was at North Carolina and then at Duke. And what I think is really interesting was when he was an adjunct, and he was at Duke, he was an adjunct professor at the Duke Business School, which is one of the better business schools in the country. And it was there for 14 years. So it was quite interesting, I think, to listen to his insights as not just a practicing physician, an academic, but also a business school adjunct professor. He also talks about a number of entrepreneurial activities he's involved with that I think would be of interest. So just a good overall entrepreneurially focused and business focused discussion. And I hope you enjoy. This is Career Moves, Personal Finance, and Entrepreneurship with Dr. Selene Parekh. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Wealth Planning for the Modern Physician podcast, where we talk to doctors like you about their real-world lessons in financial matters and hear from industry experts who can impact your personal bottom line. The host of our podcast is David Mandell. David is an attorney, OJM Group partner, and author of more than a dozen books on wealth planning for physicians. Now, let's turn the mic over to David.
Hello, I'm David Mandell, host of the program. Today's episode is going to be a really good one. We've got a lot to cover with this guest who has done a lot of interesting things, both in orthopedics and in entrepreneurial and in teaching, et cetera. So I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. Today's guest is Selene Parekh, and we're going to bring him on as soon as I go through a piece of his bio. He's got quite an impressive bio, so I'm just going to go through a piece of it. We're going to link to the full bio and a bunch of other sites that he's involved with in the show notes. So Dr. Selene Parekh is a board-certified fellowship-trained orthopedic surgeon specializing in treatment and conditions of the foot and ankle. He's an alumnus of Boston University. He earned a bachelor's degree there, as well as an MBA in healthcare management and a doctor of medicine. Additional education pursuits include a residency in orthopedic surgery, a fellowship in healthcare entrepreneurship, a second fellowship in foot and ankle at UPenn. And he retains, this is pretty interesting, a certificate in artificial intelligence from the Sloan School of Management at MIT. I don't even know if we'll get to talk about that. That might be episode 2. A respected educator, Dr. Parekh previously served as professor of orthopedic surgery at Duke University, where he taught and trained medical students, residents, and fellows. He also served as an adjunct faculty member at the Fuqua Business School at Duke University. So, at the MBA program, the business school there. And was director of digital strategy and innovation in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery. He formerly served as co-chief of the foot and ankle division at Duke and was an associate professor of orthopedic surgery. He also garnered expertise in the classroom as an assistant professor of orthopedic surgery at University of North Carolina. So that's just a piece of what he's been doing. So Selene, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So let's dive in. We got a lot to talk about. All the docs who are on this program, I always ask the same first question, which is, where'd you grow up? What made you become a physician, and what gravitated you into orthopedic surgery?
Yeah, so I'm a first generation U.S. citizen. My parents immigrated back in the 60s. Grew up in West Orange, New Jersey. Northern Jersey was a melting pot in the U.S. back in the late 60s and 70s, still is. And ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated. It's interesting. I was fascinated with technology and surgery. I didn't realize it back then, but as I reflect on my life, my first inkling in medicine was the Jarvik 7 cardiothoracic heart transplant. And I was fascinated with this at 6 years old. For whatever reason, I heard it in the news and I was like, that's pretty cool, the artificial heart. And probably that was the first bug for technology's applications in medicine in my brain. But I didn't know it. And so ever since then, every single project I could do in school was about artificial heart and cardiology. And I thought I was going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. Played a lot of sports in high school, went to college, and I wanted to mix sports, which I loved, with surgery. My brother was a medical student and said, you know what, try out orthopedic surgery. And boom, that's how I became an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, that's great. That's all the way back when you were 6. So that's you're meant to do it, obviously, born to do it. So um, because this podcast, obviously is about wealth planning, finance, etc. When you were going through your training at BU, where you did obviously an MBA in healthcare. So, kind of answers the question. But what was your exposure and interest in finance or business? Obviously, there was some because you ended up going for that degree. But tell us, how much of it was healthcare related? Do you have any interest in what was going on in the stock market or any of that? Tell us, where you were.
Yeah, my dad did actively play stocks, but I never really took an interest in it back when I was growing up in high school. In college, I did minor in economics, painstakingly so, and I
Yeah,
did it because I thought it would be helpful. But really, economics as a minor is not um, the application of economics in your day to day life. It's really about the theory of economics. And I finished the minor, but I was bored out of my mind, and I never thought I would do business. Well, what happened was after the second year of medical school in Boston, a lot of the individual hospitals were coming together to become health systems. And I figured if I wanted to be kind of the quarterback of a future orthopedic team, then I really should get an MBA to learn about the business of medicine, because medicine back in the early 90s, I saw it becoming more of a business than the practice of medicine alone. And that is what caused me to go get the MBA.
and I think I imagine that has proved out, right? I mean, if anything, there's just more business, entrepreneurship, finance, and all of that in medicine now than there was even in the early 90s, I imagine you'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the environment for startups alone, and I don't care what part of healthcare, whether it's devices or software or technology, a startup environment is probably the richest it's ever been in the history of healthcare. And part of that is, obviously the evolution of technology, the evolution of the internet, and the ease of which you can now create startups.
That's right. And, I think there's also been successes in different areas, right? Already from diagnostics to electronic health records. I mean, there's been, people have made a bunch of money. And so when that happens, obviously the VCs and private equity say, okay, this is proven. Let's go tackle the next one. Um,
Right.
so how did was your first job out of training at North Carolina? And if it wasn't, what was your first job and how did you make a selection? Like from a career point of view, what was important to you?
So it's an interesting question, because when at that time when I got my MBA, there were very few physician MBAs. And in fact, whenever I would go on interviews for residency, I was always questioned, why did you
Why
get an
did you
MBA? And really, are you going to be practicing medicine? Right.
Right.
Or are you just coming in and you're going to go to Wall Street and make a boatload of money? So, and again, it goes back to when I was 6 years old. I wanted to be a surgeon and I wanted to help people and kind of take care of patients. So I never saw the MBA as a way to leave medicine. I, in fact, saw it as a way to complement the clinical practice of medicine. So when I finished my residency, the goal was to go into clinical practice and then use the MBA to build an efficient practice, to take care of patients, and then get into innovation.
Got it. And so what was your first job coming out? And how did that fit that or did it just something that you couldn't say no to?
Um, the first job coming out of fellowship
Yeah.
was at the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
They had a foot and ankle division that had been dormant for about 5 years. They needed somebody to come in and kind of bring it back to life, revive it. So it was an opportunity to create again, innovate, figure out care pathways, and do what I thought I could do to bring back a division. At the same time, I also had an opportunity, I thought, to go to the business school and be involved in entrepreneurship at the business school. So I was trying to, again, play both sides of my career, business side as well as the clinical delivery side.
And how long were you at in North Carolina? And then what um, prompted you to go down the road to Duke? That seems kind of sacrilegious,
Yeah.
so tell me how that evolved.
I think it's sacrilegious if you grew up in the area because then you really bleed light blue
Right,
or dark blue. But
right,
I was an outsider coming in, so I had
right,
no real huge alliances. I mean, I'd always been a Duke fan, even though I was taking care of the UNC athletes.
right.
But but what happened was that in 2.5 years, I kind of built what I thought I could at UNC, and I was looking for opportunities that would allow me to grow my career academically, um, clinically with residents and fellows in a bigger program. And so I started looking, and there were the private academic group that I joined at Duke were a bunch of former UNC faculty that had left when the new chairman had come in. And so I ended up joining them in a private academic model that was affiliated with Duke.
Interesting. Okay. And so you've got in your closet some light blue and some dark blue from the different years, right? Is that right?
So we're a house divided. My wife is light blue. I get to have the kids. So me and the kids are all dark blue.
I see.
But it goes to baseball too. My wife is red for the Red Sox and we're
There we
blue
go.
for the Yankees. So
Okay.
we're a house divided.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. Well, I like your wife already if she's a Red Sox fan. Um, uh, so when you were at Duke and you can tell us how long you were there, a long time, and you just made another move recently, like this month. So we'll talk about that in a second. But what what was your role at the business school? What were you doing there? What were you teaching there? Give us a sense of what your time was like. How much clinical day, and how much in the medical teaching, and then how much over in at the business school.
So I spent 14 years at Duke. I just left a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I had a adjunct professorship or adjunct faculty title over at the business school. And really, what I was doing is guest lectures if and when it was required or needed with somebody of my expertise, and also would do uh, independent projects that the business students wanted to have that were in healthcare. So if they needed a faculty mentor to oversee an independent project that was in healthcare and translated sometimes in orthopedics, but just sometimes across healthcare and medicine, cardiovascular, whatever it was, I would help to act like a faculty mentor to oversee that. And that would range anywhere from doing business plan development to actually helping to do due diligence on ideas to see if there were any legs to the ideas, any validity to ideas. And then even for some companies, some of these business students would work with companies to do individual projects for companies in around the country, and I would help to be a faculty advisor for those.
Yeah, I remember when I got my MBA at Anderson at UCLA, and kind of our graduating thesis, like something you had to do was a group project around where you would get sponsored by or paid by, et cetera. I guess they paid the school if I remember right. Um, some project for a business, that they were thinking about, launching an X or getting into this market, and you'd have 4 or 5 people on a team, and that was your kind of senior project, I guess, is kind of like the concept. And so I mean, imagine Duke has the same thing, and it sounds like a healthcare. I'm sure would you get a bunch of people every year who are probably doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for the residency program in our orthopedic department, I got involved with, I had been involved even as a resident in what I call the business of orthopedics, teaching and training residents, fellows, and other faculty members on the business side of orthopedics, whether it's billing and coding, marketing, looking at P&L statements and understanding the kind of the P&L side of the business. So I was involved in that part of the training program as well.
Yeah, and that actually, it's funny because we've been talking for a while, but that reminds me of how we met, which is, putting together a course, a business and finance course for Kevin Plancher's meeting, who I've had on the podcast, the Ortho Summit. And, we had bankers, we had myself, we had a couple OJM people, had some attorneys, but I wanted some, business thinking, um, uh, orthopedic docs, and I think you were like number one on the list. Kevin said you got to have him, and then we've also had Dr. Ast on the program from HSS, who's great on marketing, and I want to talk about your lecture before we end. So that's
Sure.
so tell me now. So you're at Duke for a long time, comfortable, great place, have great position. Sounds like doing kind of what you want, clinical as well as the business. What prompted the recent move, and tell us about that?
Sure. I mean, the recent move has been very exciting. Joined Rothman Orthopedic Institute a couple of weeks ago. The impetus was that I've been there at Duke for 14 years. I think COVID brought home to the fact that we really didn't have any family in the Carolinas around us. I grew up in New Jersey. My wife grew up in Florida. So we were looking for opportunities both in Jersey and Florida. Rothman is a huge brand name, number four in terms of size of orthopedic group in the country, surgeon run, surgeon owned. And so it really resonated to that private academic type of mindset that I had had for the last 14 years. And so there was an opportunity to help build foot and ankle in central Jersey and in the northeastern part of Philadelphia, where there was very little foot and ankle presence. And so it was an opportunity to get back home, an
Yeah,
opportunity to be with family, and an opportunity to create again, right, and
yeah.
innovate, and kind of rebrand and rethink what I want to do and how I want to do things.
It makes sense. And, I wish you the best on that. I'm sure we'll have you on, in another season. We'll have a bunch of new things to tell us. So, before we get into some of your entrepreneurial activities, which I want to talk about, let's go back to kind of personal finance. So now you're 14 years plus you're in North Carolina, et cetera. So, whatever it is, close to 20 years in practice. How have you handled personal financial, planning? Is you someone with your background that sort of do it yourself? Have you had advisors that you use, whether they be insurance or or investment advisors? How have you balanced the, do it myself, but my time's limited and it's my best use compared to some of the other things I'm doing versus, I like doing this. And, obviously if I don't have to pay someone, that's a plus. How do you balance that tension?
My idea in life has always been surround yourself by good people, right? People who know more than you do in something that you need to be involved with, right? And so, yes, could I do the personal financial planning myself? I mean, I could, but it would take a lot of time and I probably couldn't give it the kind of attention like I do my clinical practice, right? I can't be an expert in it. So instead, I have financial planners, people that I trust that are very close to my family, have been close to the family for decades. Um, and I read a lot on personal financial planning. I talk to a lot of people. I'll bring it to my advisors. They bring me ideas. We'll hash it out. So I'm actively participating in the family's plan, but I'm not leading it. I may guide it with advice, but again, I'm not leading it. I have no problem paying somebody, certain percentages to be the expert in it. It's like, you come to the foot and ankle expert because you want expertise, not because you want the generals to take care of it.
Right.
Same kind of thing. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, we're in that business, and we have clients who, people have read our book. Let's say over the years, 20,000 people have our book, but we've worked with 1,500 clients. So that means, not, do the math. 90% of folks who read our book aren't clients, which is fine. Now, hopefully, it helps people with their own advisors or those folks who are, doing a piece of it themselves. I'm always am surprised at people who take on. I mean, I'm someone who outsources everything you know because I'd rather do what I want to do and do what I'm best used to doing. I mean, seeing
Absolutely.
another client for an hour or getting a new client or writing an article to get a new client or recording a podcast is a lot better use of my time than let's say preparing my tax return. Could I
Absolutely.
do it? Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm a tax, I used to work pretty closely in the tax area, but I would never, want to do it because I don't do it every day, and
Yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
probably
I
screw it
agree.
up.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Get the
Yeah.
experts, right? Get the experts involved.
Exactly. Exactly. And highest and best use. I'd rather, talk about the Red Sox. Well, hopefully they'll be better this year. They had a big signing. So, I'd rather go watch the Red Sox game. Let's put it that way. Prepare my tax return. So now let's talk about some of your entrepreneurial activities. You got a bunch, and I'm just going to throw out a couple of them we talked about, and you can go wherever you want with them. You
Sure.
have the fantasy doctor, which don't get excited, folks. I think it has something to do with sports. the tech doctor, and then you've got, yeah, I know you've got some other things, et cetera. So to give us a sense of what some of the things you're doing are, and also not just what they are, but what your role in it is. Have you hired people? Have you outsourced? What do you do, and what do you try to, get other people on the team to do?
Yeah. Well, early in my career, I got the entrepreneurial bug. I think once you get bitten by it, you don't lose it. During my MBA, I was surrounded by surgeons who were entrepreneurs, and some started their own businesses, others didn't, and there were innovation. But I loved the creativity of innovation. So the Fantasy Doctors was born about 8 years ago. Um, back at that time, I think it was in around the time of the World Cup, and Altidore, I think his last name was, had an injury. One of the players of your soccer team, and you were getting a lot of coach speak about the injury, and I was just irritated by the fact that you were getting coach speak. And so I just broke down the injury online on the blog. It took me about 2 hours to do it because it's like writing a paper; it just takes time. And we got a lot of hits. And I just thought, hey, there's something here. So I started blogging about injuries of pro athletes, started getting a lot of traction. But the problem is, as a busy clinician, when do I have 2 hours to donate to devote to a blog? So it started getting very tiresome and very cumbersome. And then fast forward, technology started improving, cell phone cameras started getting better. So I started vlogging instead and doing video analysis, put it up on YouTube, and that started getting wildly popular. And again, it was all about injuries of athletes and breaking it down, giving you insight, return to play from what we could figure out either from video analysis or from what limited information you got from the teams. Um, some of the guys in the fantasy world, actually two of my partners now, reached out and said, "We love what we're doing, what you're doing. How about we form a company?" And boom, that was the Fantasy Doctors. So I do some content production now for the Fantasy Doctors, but I'm really the acting CEO, helping with doing strategic relationships with industry, also looking at ways that we can use technology to have a deeper analysis to some of the video analysis we do, looking for relationships with injuries and return to plays on performance. And that's continued to grow. During football season, we get about 2 million eyeballs that hit our YouTube channel, and that's growing on our YouTube, on our TikTok, and on our Instagram. I mean, we're in the tens of millions of views. So it is a platform that is phenomenally growing. If you follow fantasy sports, that's an $8 billion industry
Yeah.
and growing, right? And so if you take into, we cover all sports, NFL, soccer, um, NBA, cricket. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. We cover the sports. We have a team of about 20 guys. Two of them really help with content production. I step in with some of the bigger injuries, but everybody's participating from around the country. It's a phenomenal. It's a fun project on the side. Hopefully, at some point, it gets somewhere bigger. We've been on Sirius XM, Yahoo Sports, DraftKings, all that stuff. So it's really fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Uh, yeah, Tech Doctor is just kind of an online thing. When there's technology that I read about that I think is interesting, I'll hashtag it with Tech Doctor. With my interest in technology, I really love following tech and how, whether it's already being implemented or technology that's not implemented in medicine could be implemented, and I'll hashtag it with Tech Doc to just follow that over time.
Yep. Yep. Anything else of note? I mean, not that you have any more time, but I just have to ask. Anything else that you're involved in that you want to tell docs about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm involved in a lot of things. I think that when you get to a certain point in your career, if you really like innovation, you look for opportunities. Once you have a few successes, people identify you as somebody who's the successful innovator or thinker, and then opportunities start coming to
Right.
you, and you don't have to go looking for them as hard. So I am involved in a lot of things, from some consumer goods that are on the market already to some things you're going to hear about in the next few months. Interested involved in some AR VR stuff as well. That should be coming out in the next few years. So I'm all over the place,
Yeah.
and really what it's all about is following your passion, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what this is about: following passion, so it's not work and it's just things you love to do and create.
So we'll certainly have you on another episode to tell us about some of the other things you're doing. But it was a great segue what you just mentioned, because at our course when you spoke on kind of career advice, balancing work, entrepreneurship, family life, et cetera. It was really about balance and how to be I think, a happy physician, a happy surgeon, right? I mean, I really took that away. It was kind of almost a bigger picture um, talk that I think was really valuable. So, my guess is you've given that talk to different groups. It wasn't the first time, wasn't the last time. It's probably something you leave with your fellows and all that. So, give us the high level executive summary in a couple minutes on what is your lesson when you speak on that topic in terms of, getting the most out of your career as a physician, but balancing those competing interests.
Yeah, I think you've got to figure out what kind of physician you want to be, right? Do you want to be the clinician that comes in at 7 o'clock and leaves at 8 o'clock at night? Do you want to be the guy who's very efficient and leaves by, 3 or 4, and then follows outside interests? Or do you want to be the guy who checks in at 10 or 2 and 10 and out at 2? You got to figure out what you want to be, right? And then you also have to follow your passion. So if you go in and you hate being in the office or you hate being in the OR, maybe you need to look and see there's something else you can do that you're passionate about. Because I think balance is about being happy. It's about finding the things that you are passionate about. So it doesn't feel like work. It's just fun. And obviously you're doing stuff and it is work, but you don't feel it. And then balancing that out with things that are important to you, whether it's extracurricular activities, whether it's your family. I think happiness in life's about balance. It's not pursuing any one thing so hard that you forget everything else. I think that's the biggest thing. It's always a yin and yang. It's always kind of scales going back and forth, back and forth. So there are days and weeks and months where I'm not balanced. And my wife or I will say, hey, you know what? I got to kind of push it the other way again. That's okay. But it's always evaluating, always kind of coming, trying to get as closely balanced as possible so that you're finding happiness.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things. One is, that old adage, know thyself. That's where it starts. You have to, you can't, try to design something unless you have some idea of what is going to bring you happiness or fulfillment. And the other piece of that is to take the time. There's a great business book called The E Myth, which is, basically the lesson is work on the business, not just in it. And that you could say the same thing on your career. Don't just work in the career, but work on it. Take some time to think about, you know, it, hey, I've been, putting my head down as a surgeon or as a physician in any specialty for 10 years. Okay, now I'm an expert in what I do. I know how to take care of patients. I got it. But is this what I want to do for the next 20 years? And that can happen at any time. My father's a good example. He's a radiologist. Technology's been in radiology. I mean, I remember him in a telemedicine company where he literally had one of those big dishes on the top of an SUV. So like he would come out of the movies and read a film with a dish setting. Well, obviously now it's all on your phone. But that was like, the beginning of telemedicine. And
Yeah,
radiology was at the kind of the forefront of that because, they didn't need to be in the room, you know? And so
right.
he's been involved in that from the beginning. And obviously there's an application of entrepreneurship. Not every doc's going to have that bug, but I think your example of not only going to different places, having the business involvement, having the teaching involvement, both on the medicine and the business side, and then proofs in the pudding. You're moving now for another reason. You've been able to keep your mind open and make changes that in your I guess in your view are towards that goal of being balanced and happy. You don't have
Yeah,
to. I guess one of my points is don't let inertia keep you back from doing something. Right? You have to put yourself out there. Go ahead.
that's exactly what I was going to get to. Right. I mean, you touched on something which is fear of the unknown. I think a lot of people, not just physicians, keep waking up doing what they do because it's familiar. They may not be happy, they might not be balanced, but the fear of not doing that is too overwhelming. So it's the inertia it's just too much. So they won't go do it. I think sometimes you have to say it's okay. And yeah, there's unknowns, but you got to trust yourself. You got to trust your skill sets and know that it'll probably be okay, but you just have to make the jump.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And with entrepreneurship, as you know, and I know, failure is part of it, right? And so it doesn't mean you put all
Mm.
your eggs in the basket. No, as a wealth manager, we're not going to tell a client that, right? but there's ways to put your feet in, put your foot in, your toe in, or whatever analogy you want to use. And just like you were describing with the fantasy doc, you started with some blogs, kind of tested it. Hey, it did well. Now I'm going to go to video. Didn't even better. Now I got approached. Maybe I can dedicate some more time. You didn't just one day say, you know what, I love football and fantasy. I'm quitting my job as a professor and a clinician, and I'm going to do this all day tomorrow. Right? There's ways to ease into it and test the waters.
And if I was Elon Musk, I would, but
Yeah.
no, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, that changes a lot of things. So last question I have for you, and we'll wrap. Obviously, you've taught fellows and all that all along the way. So you can imagine it as what is a nugget, something in finance, business, entrepreneurship, one idea that you would give to a fellow coming out, or you could also think of it as if you had a time machine, you go back to yourself coming out, BU all those years ago. What's one piece of advice you'd give? And you've probably got a lot, but just think about one that you would give to yourself at
Yeah.
that age.
Um, well, I think I did this, but I think it's an important lesson, right? I mean, it's easy to look at individuals who are 15, 20, 30 years out and say, wow, look at all those things that they're doing. I want to just do that, right? I think the mistake is if you are going to be a clinician, focus on your craft first. Take care of patients, spend the first few years of your career learning your craft. Because when you were a resident or fellow, you were learning, but you didn't own it. They weren't your patients. The buck didn't stop with you. It's so different when you're in practice and you are the final voice of that patient's care. And I think take those first few years and really own the craft, then diversify, right? Focus and then diversify. And just like you said, you practice being a clinician, and then you can practice you figure out how to manage your career after that. I think that is important because I've had too many fellows say, hey, I want to do all those things you're doing. You can't just start like that. You just can't.
That's a great piece of advice, and it's not one that we've heard before in this 3 years. So I really glad you said that, and it makes sense. You have to. The analogy would be, an athlete or a great musician. You got to learn what you're doing first and be great at it, and then you can improvise and make all these kind of and break the rules. But you got to learn the rules first. Like a Miles Davis has said
Yeah.
this thing. He broke all the rules, but he said, well, first I had to know all the rules and get those down first, and then I can go play around. You can't go right to that because you have to have the foundation first. So
Yep.
it's excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on. It was excellent. You've got so much going on in your new position and everything you're doing. I'm sure we'll have you back on in another episode, probably in next season. So, but thank you
Yeah,
so
I'd
much.
love to. Thanks so much.
Excellent. And for all the listeners, if you're a physician who has an interesting story, some entrepreneurship, interesting story about your career, or just some lessons you think you could impart to your fellow physician, feel free to contact me. Thanks for listening. Tell your colleagues about us, and in another couple of weeks, we'll have another episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. The Wealth Planning for the Modern Physician podcast is brought to you by OJM Group, a multidisciplinary wealth management firm dedicated to helping physicians build and preserve their wealth while reducing taxes. Podcast listeners can get a free copy of our newest book. Simply text WPPOD to 844-418-1212 and click the link in the reply text to request your free print copy or ebook download. Be sure to join David for the next episode of the podcast. It's important to note that this content is for informational purposes only and does not represent personalized investment advice, as the information may not be suitable for your personal circumstances. Please contact your investment advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed.